Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. More than 700 protesters showed up at the University of Lethbridge to denounce a speaker who says wokeism is threatening academic freedom. A former Calgary street preacher and now leader of the Independence Party of Alberta was in Lethbridge court. We will explain why. And Ottawa announced that it is delaying medical assistance in dying for those suffering mental illness till the year 2024. We have reaction.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Controversial speaker and former Mount Royal University professor Frances Widdowson made the trek to the University of Lethbridge despite opposition from the U of L for a speaking engagement. On Monday, the university cancelled her lecture called How Wokeism Threatens Academic Freedom. She insisted on still showing up, and when she arrived at the post-secondary on Wednesday, she was greeted by over 700 students and staff who were not happy to see her. She also mentioned she had some supporters on hand. Video journalist Micah Quinn has the story.
Yo, Frances, get the out of here!
In the past, Frances Widdowson has brought forward controversial opinions on the Black Lives Matter movement and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's decision that Canada's residential school system was genocidal, along with the educational benefits of residential schools. The Alberta Minister of Advanced Education, Dimitrios Nicolaides, says the UCP is planning to make an announcement to strengthen free speech at universities. Widdowson says she strongly believes in the right to free speech at post-secondaries.
Things are completely disintegrating before our eyes, and I really value our public institutions, and it's very, very disturbing to me that they are being destroyed in this way, and the government is responsible for the public funding of these institutions. My view is that we need a public inquiry about universities and open inquiry in Alberta.
On Wednesday evening, Dr. Mike Mann, the President and Vice Chancellor of the University of Lethbridge, sent Bridge City News a statement, which reads in part, "Tonight's events were a coming together of our community to show support for each other and a reflection of the values of the University of Lethbridge. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to our community members for conducting themselves in such a peaceful and powerful manner." Protesters of Widdowson said they were in full support of the U of L cancelling her planned speaking engagement.
You know, it's the risk of misinformation for people who have not gathered previous information. You know, like residential school was not positive. I worked at a job last summer where I in-depth researched the 6 residential schools on the Blood Reserve. So I know every single incident, I know every single death that happened.
Widdowson told us she was escorted to a safe area in the U of L by security and then proceeded to leave the building. Later in the evening, she held her original planned lecture through Zoom. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Former Calgary street preacher and now leader of the Independence Party of Alberta, Arthur Pawlowski, was in Lethbridge court on Thursday. Now, Pawlowski was charged with inciting mischief, counselling interference with critical infrastructure, and failing to keep the peace when he spoke at the Coutts border blockade last winter. Pawlowski says the Crown prosecutor did not bring forth any witnesses on Thursday.
The only thing that the Crown has presented was my sermon to the truckers and the farmers in Coutts exactly 1 year ago. What did I say during the speech? Well, I said to the people to stand for the grounds. I told them to do it peacefully, no guns, no swords. Well, the Crown prosecutor is comparing my speech to Rwanda genocide. I mean, that was a shocker. Well, I'm hoping to be vindicated 100%. I mean, I've done nothing wrong. If this is a trial of the century, if I'm convicted by giving people a sermon from our heart, reminding them of our history of the solidarity movement, if that's criminal behavior, there goes your freedom of expression, there goes your freedom of religion, there goes all your freedoms.
Arthur Pawlowski's brother Dawood was also at the courthouse and explained why he believes his brother is innocent.
What did my brother do at the border? He was called there to officiate a church service. So now you want to tell me that in Canada you cannot officiate a church service as a clergy man? What else did he do? He inspired the people to stand for their families, for their jobs, for their God-given freedoms. And on top of that, they had a Holy Communion. So what, Holy Communion now, if you do it as a clergyman or just a citizen, you're faced with a 10.5-year prison term. It's absolutely insanity.
The trial involving Arthur Pawlowski continues Friday at the Lethbridge Provincial Courthouse. Canada's public safety critic and Conservative MP Raquel Dancho says her party has brought forth a motion aimed at reversing the Liberal government's bail policy. Dancho says many Canadians are quite concerned about the government's crime policies and changes need to be made.
We all saw when a Toronto constable, a young police officer, was murdered by a man who was out on bail. He also had a firearms prohibition. We are seeing these situations across the country. If you take Vancouver, for example, 40 people were arrested 6,000 times in 1 year. That's roughly 150 times for each of those 40 people. That's every 2 or 3 days the police are arresting the same person. This is a nonpartisan issue in the sense that we are seeing every single premier in the country, all 13 of them from Liberal, NDP, and Conservative, calling on the Liberal government to reform bail. They are demanding bail reform.
Federal ministers held a news conference on Parliament Hill discussing a new bill concerning medical assistance in dying. Bill C-39 will delay the extension of assisted dying eligibility to those who suffer from mental health disorders until March 17th of 2024. Justice Minister David Lametti says, however, a lot of the legwork has already been done.
Much of the work, beginning with the work done by the expert committee, has been done. And at the federal level, there is a very firm belief that everything that we had to do at the federal level is either completed or would be completed by the original deadline. So we're pretty close. A lot of the provinces have done a great deal of work in order to implement it for the original deadline. What we're doing with this deadline is giving time. For whatever reason, COVID or other factors, giving time to those provinces, faculties of medicine, et cetera, to internalize the very, I think, positive guidelines that are given by the expert committee and with the subsequent work done by the federal government, and to allow everybody to be on the same page.
Alex Schedenberg is the Executive Director of Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. He says it's very concerning that MAID is still moving forward for those who struggle with mental illness.
So the government hasn't announced that they're not going to implement. They're talking about the delay. So the issue of euthanasia for mental illness continues to be a problem. They're just delaying it for a year. My concerns are quite clear that you've already had issues around people with disabilities dying by euthanasia based on poverty, homelessness, an inability to receive effective medical treatment. And now they're going to still talk about euthanasia for mental illness. They're just delaying it for a year. And people with mental illness have the same problems. A lot of them are experiencing homelessness, poverty, and many of them are unable to receive or effectively receive the treatment that they need.
Euthanasia Prevention Coalition is a nonprofit group based in London, Ontario, which launched back in 1998. Now, according to their website, their aim is to promote compassionate community care services as opposed to mercy killings or assisted suicide. Well, we saw more light flurries across much of southwestern Alberta again today and slightly cooler. Jeanette Rocher is in now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, fortunately, a warming trend maybe just around the corner.
Yes, just around the corner indeed, Hal. And I, for one, cannot wait for that because it feels like it's been far too cold for far too long. Even today, it took a while to jump up to that 5 degrees. I don't even think we got there. We were sitting at around 3 degrees this afternoon. And even just before lunch, we were still at -8. So it was definitely a very slow warm up today. And it was probably because of that 60-kilometer-per-hour wind. Those wind gusts will continue overnight up to 50K with an overnight low of -3. Into tomorrow, Friday, we're looking at a high of 8 degrees. Hopefully that warm up will happen much quicker tomorrow. We're seeing that 50K wind as well. And then for the weekend, it should warm up even more as we get into next week. And I'll be back later in the show to give you all those details.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. The 2023 Sirens for Life campaign is officially kicked off in Lethbridge. The Canadian Blood Services Plasma Donor Centre hopes to collect 200 donations and bring in new donors over the course of the campaign. As Angela Stewart reports now, the initiative is also a chance for some first responders and city officials to have some healthy competition between each other.
First responders in Lethbridge and surrounding areas are answering a different kind of emergency service call for the month of February. The 2023 Sirens for Life Alberta Challenge campaign kicked off Thursday with emergency workers from the Lethbridge Police Service, the Taber Fire Department, as well as city officials from the town of Coaldale donating their plasma. Chief of Police for Lethbridge Police Service Shaheen Medizadeh was one of the many first responders to roll up his sleeve and kick back for the cause.
I believe everybody knows about the importance of giving blood and plasma. We need it, and there's always a need for it. It saves lives every day, which is really what we can do as human beings to contribute.
Mayor for the town of Coaldale, Jack Van Ryan, also was at the Plasma Centre, doing his part to support Canada's Lifeline.
I think it's important that when they do a program like they're doing with the Sirens for Life, it gets people out for the first time, and hopefully they'll be a repeat customer and start coming on a regular basis.
Brenna Scott with the Lethbridge Plasma Centre says they hope to collect at least 200 donations and bring in 100 new donors to the centre during the month-long challenge.
We do have the fire department here in mid-February. They're bringing 17 of their firefighters in to donate, so hopefully the other fire departments can beat them. But we do see a strong uptake in our donations here for February.
Scott says this month was the best time to hold the campaign, as January is typically a slow time for donations.
Usually early January we see kind of a drop in donations. However, this January we were still able to engage donors from that holiday season to have them in.
And while it's an exciting time to give back, the Sirens for Life Challenge is also an opportunity to have some healthy competition among the different departments to see who can bring in the most donations.
I also have the attitude that we don't need for wait for a competition to go and do this. I truly believe we should be competing year-round.
For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Alberta sheriffs are going to be helping Edmonton police to try and keep order in the downtown core over the next 15 weeks. The UCP says this is a pilot project aimed at dealing with public safety as the city continues to deal with widespread crime, homelessness, addictions, and mental health issues. Public Safety Minister Mike Ellis says the issues are prompting businesses to leave the downtown area. Edmonton Police Chief Dale McPhee says the sheriffs will be paired with city police officers to provide patrols 7 days a week and around 20 hours a day. The Alberta government announced more financial help for low-income families. Officials say the province is investing up to $15 million to support low-income transit programs. This year, Calgary and Edmonton each received $4.5 million to provide Transit Pass programs, but more funding will be made available to support Transit Pass programs in other municipalities across the province.
$6 million in new funding has been allocated specifically to support municipalities outside of Edmonton and Calgary that have transit systems and currently offer low-income transit programs. This will expand low-income transit pass programs in more communities like Canmore and Banff. This funding is allowing us to contribute to programs in Calgary and Edmonton and expand funding to more communities right across this province.
Alberta Deputy Premier and Infrastructure Minister Nathan Neudorf is speaking out against Justin Trudeau's Just Transition Plan. Neudorf says we shouldn't be so quick to transition away from our country's oil and gas sector. He says the Trudeau Liberals need to stay in their lane.
We need to make sure that we transition in the appropriate time when there's viable solutions. Many of them are not there. And people that come back and say, well, we have battery operated cars. All I say is, where does the energy come from to power those cars? Right now in Canada, the vast dominant supplier of that energy is oil or natural gas. We do want to make this transition. We do want to do it appropriately. We do want to do it with the environment in mind, but there is a way to do it. And we're asking the federal government to stay in their lane and work with us on the appropriate way to do that without the bullying that we've seen too often from them.
Alberta Deputy Premier Nathan Neudorf will also discuss the latest on how the province is addressing the physician shortage here in our region. Watch for the full interview coming up in the second half of our broadcast. Flair Airlines says it's adding new routes and expanding service to and from Winnipeg. The low-cost airline says it will begin offering flights this summer between Winnipeg and two cities in British Columbia, Victoria and Kelowna. There will also be service to and from London, Ontario. Flair says there will also be increased flights to Calgary, Vancouver, and Toronto. Canada's new representative on combating Islamophobia apologized for past comments she made about Quebecers. Amira Al-Gawabi says as a Muslim, she knows what it's like to be judged. In May of 2021, she slammed an opinion piece that mentioned the largest group of people in the country victimized by British colonialism as French Canadians. In the past, she said she had nothing to apologize for.
I apologized for the hurt that my words have caused. You know, as a member of Canada's Muslim communities, we know what it's like to be judged. We know what it's like to face bias. We know what it's like to be seen in a particular way that doesn't reflect what we really are about. And in the course of my efforts to bring awareness to the various ways that we face discrimination, the way that I described that caused hurt, and that was never my intention.
The majority of the National Assembly of Quebec have called for Al-Gawabi's resignation. Members of Parliament voted unanimously to call on the federal government to start a refugee program to help resettle 10,000 Uyghur Muslims fleeing persecution in China. Liberal MP Samir Zuberi says this sends a very strong message to the world.
This is historic not only for Canada, but for the international community, for human rights, our human family. What's happening to the Uyghur people is unacceptable. At this time, Canada is meeting the moment by saying clearly we will resettle 10,000 Uyghur in third countries as of 2024, over 2 years. This was done jointly. Everyone in the House of Commons worked for this.
Now, there's no word yet on if the federal government is also helping to resettle persecuted Christians from China. You may remember the name Christine Anderson. She's the German politician who spoke out against Justin Trudeau in the European Parliament. Anderson explains why she's not a big fan of our Prime Minister. She says it really stems from how Canadians' freedoms were squashed during the COVID-19 pandemic.
It seemed pretty clear to me. I mean, he was violating fundamental rights to an extent that he didn't even try to hide it anymore. And he was so open and honest about that he was undermining democracy, freedom, and the rule of law. And to me, it just, I had the impression he just thought he could do whatever he wanted. But no, he will always have to count on people calling him out on that. And I really didn't want to run the risk of no one doing it. So, you know how it goes. I mean, the things you do yourself, they're done. So I just decided I will do it.
Make sure you catch the very colorful interview with German parliamentarian Christine Anderson and myself coming up after Business News. Well, it was cold and snowy again today across much of southwestern Alberta, but fortunately, a reprieve is on the way. A full look at the weather picture is on deck. Well, we saw some more snow and blowing snow across Lethbridge, and much cooler than our average high for this time of year, which is the freezing mark, 0. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, if we hang in a little bit longer, we could potentially see some plus temperatures again soon?
Exactly, Hal. We'll definitely see them this weekend, and we did actually see it today. We didn't think we were going to get there, but we finally did. Into Friday, also, we're looking at a high of 8 degrees, 7 the high on Saturday. Lots of sunshine remaining for Sunday with a high of 9 degrees. That's pretty close to those 10 digits. I'm pretty excited about that. Back to 8 on Monday with plenty of sunshine, 9 degrees on Tuesday, and then a high of 4 degrees on Wednesday. So we're certainly sitting well above the average for this time of year, which is 0. Average low is -13. 19 was the high temperature on this day back in 1962, and it was -41 back in 1996. We should be thankful that we're not there right now. 8:03, that's when the sun rose this morning, sunset this evening at 5:27 p.m., giving us 9 hours and 24 minutes of daylight, almost 9.5 hours. Lovely. Okay, on the west coast, we are seeing a bit of sprinkling of showers in Victoria, 9 degrees the high, 80 kilometer per hour winds in the Juan de Fuca Strait, 70 winds near the water in Vancouver. Vancouver also looking at some showers, 9 degrees the high there, high of 2 in Edmonton tomorrow, and a high of 5 degrees in Calgary with that mix of sun and cloud. Now, as we move over to the prairies, we are seeing a high of -9 in Saskatoon, -8 the high in Regina with a mix of sun and cloud. And there's that chilly, -18 in Winnipeg. Winnipeg also sitting under an extreme cold warning, and they are looking at some flurries as well. As we look to central Canada, all of these cities looking at a snow squall watch for this evening, an extreme cold warning in effect. Look at these temperatures. -25 in both Ottawa and Montreal, even though they're sitting with sunshine there. -13 the high tomorrow in Toronto. Toronto could see those flurries as well. We're looking at blowing snow, risk of frostbite. That could actually happen in minutes with that extreme cold warning. Same thing for the entire Atlantic Canada. Extreme cold warning in effect for all of these cities here. Fredericton sitting at -11. Going to feel much colder though with that wind chill. Looking at flurries as well. Halifax sitting at 1, 0 the high for Charlottetown, and 1 degree the high in St. John's, Newfoundland. Looking at mix of snow and rain there. Could see up to 2 centimeters of snow. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Today's weather report is brought to you by Bridge Utilities, providing competitive rates for electricity, natural gas, and internet, while investing back in communities across southern Alberta.
Rogers Communications says its fourth quarter earnings got a big boost from higher roaming revenue as travel bounced back and improved returns from sports advertising and its Toronto Blue Jays franchise. The telecom giant says its profit in the quarter jumped from $405 million to $508 million. Revenue was up 6% to $4.17 billion. Rogers executives say the company made progress amid a backdrop of a lingering pandemic, new executive team, and its proposed $26 billion acquisition of Shaw Communications. Global energy giant Shell says its adjusted earnings doubled to a record high of $39.9 billion US last year as oil and gas prices soared following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The London-based company also announced it is raising its dividend payment to shareholders by 15% and buying back $4 billion worth of shares. Industry experts call the results truly stunning. They say Shell's recent success will do nothing to quiet demands for further windfall taxes to redistribute some of the bounty Shell has enjoyed as consumers and businesses struggle with sharply higher energy costs. Facebook's parent company Meta posted another quarter of declining revenue. Company officials say they were hurt by a downturn in the online advertising market and competition from TikTok. The company's stock soared, however, in extended trading as it's announced a $40 billion stock buyback. Meta Platforms Inc. says it earned $4.65 billion US, or $1.76 per share in the final 3 months of 2022. That is still down 55%, however, from a year earlier. Revenue also fell 4% to $32.17 billion. Film cameras appear to be making a bit of a comeback. Now, some say, like vinyl records, it's more the nostalgia factor. Staff at McBain Camera here in Lethbridge say a lot of their customers are now using film instead of digital. Store manager Quentin Viscup says a lot of the younger generation is also getting into film.
It's back to that sort of like vinyl and analog, you know, everybody's kind of into that. It's fun. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of people. We're finding a lot of older people are trading in their cameras just because they don't use them anymore. But that's great because that opens up a market for the young kids to pick up this older technology. There's a charm in film, right? And you know, there's a certain look to it, you know, that you just can't create with a digital photography.
Viscup says they still have a wide variety of film cameras if anybody's interested in popping by to have a look. You know what I really miss? The Polaroids. You take a picture and watch it develop right in front of you. That was pretty cool. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 10 points on the day to finish at 20,740. The Dow was down 39 points to 34,053. The S&P 500 was up 60 on the day to 4179, and the Nasdaq was also up on the day 384 points to 12,200. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 46 cents to 75.95 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 2 cents to 2.45 US. Gold was up a cent to 19.1274 US an ounce, and silver was even on the day at 23.47 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.92 per bushel, barley's at $9.14, canola's at $18.73, and corn is at $11.20 per bushel. Live cattle February contract was up $1.33 to $159.75. Feeder cattle March contract was up $2.68 to $185.93. And lean hogs February contract was up $1.38 to $75.35. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 75.09 US. Recapping one of our top stories, more than 700 protesters showed up to denounce controversial Speaker Frances Widdowson at the University of Lethbridge on Wednesday. Many blasted Widdowson, who entitled her speech, "How Wokeism Threatens Academic Freedom." In the past, Widdowson criticized the Black Lives Matter movement and has said there were educational benefits to residential schools. Coming up, an exclusive one-on-one interview with German parliamentarian Christine Anderson, who blasted Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. She says his leadership has hurt so many Canadians and explains why in our interview with her shortly. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Help support a worthy cause. The second annual Badges vs. Bolts Charity Classic Hockey Challenge is taking place Saturday, February 11th at the Nicholas Sharon Arena with a puck dropping at 7:30 p.m. Cheer on our local first responders and Lethbridge Lightning semi-pro hockey team as they battle it out. A live auction will be held during the first period intermission, and a live player auction will take place during the second and third periods. Tickets are $25 each. Kids 12 and under are free. Purchase yours at Lethbridge Tactical Supply or call 403-647-4103. A percentage of the ticket sales will be donated to the Jack Addy Cancer Center. Do you have a heart to serve our community? Streets Alive Mission is looking for volunteers to help make sandwiches, sort incoming donations, assist with Food Friday, and many other opportunities to serve, receive training, and to provide support for this important cause of bringing hope to the hopeless. Visit streetsalive.ca to fill out their volunteer application or call 403-320-1159. And that's today's Bridge City News community calendar.
You may remember a little while ago there was a German politician who blasted Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on how she said he treated Canadians during the pandemic. Christine Anderson is a German politician who's serving as an Alternative of Germany member of the European Parliament. And Ms. Anderson joins us now from Brussels. Ms. Anderson, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you for having me.
Now, many Canadians would actually agree with some of the comments you made about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, but what prompted you to speak out so broadly and so passionately about our Prime Minister?
Well, it seemed pretty clear to me. I mean, he was violating fundamental rights to an extent that he didn't even try to hide it anymore. And he was so open and honest about that he was undermining democracy, freedom, and the rule of law. And to me, it just, I had the impression he just thought he could do whatever he wanted. But no, he will always have to count on people calling him out on that. And I really didn't want to run the risk of no one doing it. So, you know how it goes. I mean, the things you do yourself, they're done. So I just decided I will do it, just not to run the risk and no one will speak up. So I decided to do it.
Did you receive much backlash, or was there a lot of support following your comments?
Well, it was here and there. There was a huge support, from Canada, from Canadians. There was a lot of support from people around the world, really. There were some people, they started looking at me funny, when I walked the halls of EU Parliament. Obviously, they did not agree with me. But if I had to, I would say I received more support than I didn't, and the ones that really didn't like it, they either didn't speak to me at all or, just decided, that's it, we're going to hate her for the rest of her life. Well, let them. I really don't care. I'm doing this job. I'm serving the people, and that's what I intend to continue to do. So if these people in this place don't like me, I'm pretty sure I got it. I got it all right. If they don't like me. So.
Now, just months ago, we saw Chinese President Xi Jinping also blast Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Have you had a chance to chat with other world leaders, maybe even some in Europe, about how they view Canada's Prime Minister?
No, I haven't had the chance of speaking to other world leaders, because most of the world leaders, especially in the Western democracies, they are more along the lines of what Trudeau is saying and what he's doing. So they would, rather defend him, because let's not forget, they were all in lockstep when these restrictions were handed down and were implemented. They were in lockstep. So I really don't think they are that keen on, talking to me about Justin Trudeau, because as outspoken as I am, they may not like what I have to say about him.
Now, as you know, here in Alberta and Canada, oil and gas is a big part of our economy and our GDP. When the German Chancellor was asking Canada for the components to pump much-needed natural gas to the German industry, how did you feel that Justin Trudeau kind of approached the subject? Some say that it appeared like he didn't really care about the needs of the German people. How did you view it?
Well, I was like, well, that serves our chancellor just right, because they're so obnoxious, our climate change, and, Germany once again sets out to save the entire planet, because Germans always do, kind of. So now it's this climate change, and, we are marching in front of the parade, and we are shaming all of the other countries that would not go along with our idiotic plans of shutting down all nuclear power and all of that. So it served him just right. He cannot just, our government, it wasn't his government, he was part of the government. They shut it all down. They literally cut us off of any energy supply. And then I remember the UN summit where then sitting President Donald Trump, he was pretty much like outlining for Germany that we're making a huge mistake. And on top of that, we have become dependent upon Russian gas. And the representatives of the German government, they were laughing their butts off at this ridiculous comment that Trump made. Well, it turns out he was right now, wasn't he? Yes, we became totally dependent upon Russian gas because we just want to save the planet, and we shut down all of our nuclear power plants, and we are an industrial nation. So he should not, or Germany, in my point of view, should not be rewarded for being just so stupid. And we should not be rewarded that we would afford for ourselves the most ridiculous and most stupid government in the entire world.
Now, a couple of months ago, Qatar signed a deal with Deutschland to supply natural gas into the 2040s. Now, when you see something like this happen, what conclusions do you think Canadians should draw upon our present leadership here?
Well, just that Qatar deal, that is a heck of a lot better now. We're not getting the gas from Russia anymore because Russia is bad, but Qatar is just fine. Really? Last time I checked, no, they were not. But, it's like, once again, they're looking at issues, but, the judgments they're passing, it always depends on what they're trying to get at. So they do not judge instances on the merits. They, rather on what, they may benefit from. So, if we now get the gas from Qatar, well, I guess, yeah, they kind of do. But the thing is just, we are bound by contract to get Russian gas. But guess what? We told Putin now, no, you are such an evil guy. We will not take your gas. But since we're bound by contract, we won't get it, we won't take it, we'll refuse to take it, but we still have to pay it. So what happens now is Russia is now paying the gas we will not take, but paid him for it. He is sending this now to India, and we're buying it from India, the very same gas, and we'll pay it again to India. Is that absurd? Seriously.
Let's talk a lot about those who are preaching about renewable energies. Some people call them green gospel crusaders, and a lot of them are attacking Canada's energy sector, or oil and gas, but not necessarily Norway or maybe Saudi Arabia, some of the Middle Eastern countries. Why do you think that is?
Well, once again, they're like picking at certain countries and trying to get them online, so the public is being gaslit, the public is being manipulated. It's all bad. If we have to save the climate, we have to save the planet. So this is what we have to do, and we will start in Canada. We will start here. We will start there. But the other countries will have to fall in line. They just start somewhere. The same you see with the farmers in the Netherlands. It's this particular issue is starting in the Netherlands. But make no mistake, it will get to your front door very quickly.
Now, some Canadians feel that our leadership has abandoned sound business principles, but have also abandoned its citizens and even our allies in their time of need, especially when it comes to some of the natural resource sector, including natural gas. Now, Christine, in your opinion, is this a page out of the World Economic Forum playbook, or is this seen as simply inept management?
Well, I'm not really sure if it's, the World Economic Forum playbook. I mean, they are propagating, these scenarios, and they want us to do it. I'm not quite sure if they're actually the ones calling the shots, because, the World Economic Forum is just one player. It's just one, they're the ones, hanging their noses into the camera like Klaus Schwab and whatever, but they're not the ones calling the shots. I don't think so. I don't know who is calling the shots, but you have this organization here, then you have the WHO over there. I mean, they're doing exactly the same thing, just on another issue. But it all boils down to removing democratic processes further and further away from the people, to remove political accountability, which is like the foundation of every democracy. This is what we're seeing here. And you have very different areas where they're doing this. You have climate change, you have this gender idiocy, you have the whole COVID madness. All of these things all have the very same goal, to disenfranchise the people.
Are you seeing any of the WEF policies impacting some of the countries in Europe right now?
Yeah, there are. There are so many. I mean, they're talking about it, and they're having a forum, and they're inviting all the world leaders, and they're selling them their ideas of a better world. And then in turn, the politicians turn around and tell the people, well, we're going to live in a better world. All we have to do is this, that, and the other. And a lot of people, unfortunately, they're falling for this. Just the promise of living. I mean, who doesn't want to live in a better world? But people need to look at how are they actually trying to achieve that better world. And then let's ask, a better world for who exactly? That's the question. So when you look at, for instance, these housing quarters they're erecting now in Saudi Arabia, the Neom City, it's supposed to house 9 million people in the middle of nowhere. They're under total control, nowhere to run. And I mean, is that the better world they're talking about? So a better world for who? That's my question. And before I don't get a satisfying answer on that, I will not buy their crap.
Now, during the month of February, many are commemorating the one-year anniversary of the Freedom Convoy, the rally of all the truckers that went to our nation's capital in Ottawa. How did you view this event, and what did you think of the convoy and rally that it really did for freedom here in Canada and across the world? It inspired a lot of people.
Yes. Gosh, when I heard about that, I was like, finally someone is doing something. And the icing on the cake really was that it was so successful because it did travel. They were not only rolling in Canada. I mean, symbolically, they were rolling over the entire planet. And as you said, yes, they were inspiring a lot of people. And it was a spark of hope for so many people, millions and millions of people that was sent around the world. And it was after that you saw these huge protests in pretty much every single country all around the world, well, where it was allowed to, in the Western democracies. But that's what sparked it. because that's really what people needed. They were so devastated. They were hopeless. They didn't know what to do anymore. They were threatened with their livelihoods. You won't have a job if you don't get the jab. You may have to pay for your treatment yourself. And guess what? Now we lock you up in your house. You're no longer allowed to leave the house. I mean, all this pressure, and there was like nothing that the people saw they could do about this. And if they did, they were being discredited. They were called right-wing extremists, whatever. I mean, the whole shebang went down. And then this happened in Canada, and the truckers just started rolling. Gosh, I was like, that's it, yes. And I decided, well, these guys need all the support they can get. And that's really why I decided to speak out about it, because that hope, that's what the world needs right now. And it changed the whole thing. It really did.
Now, you're coming to our great land here in Canada. You're going to be touring a few cities. What message do you want to convey to Canadians?
Well, first of all, a big thank you. Because, like I said, this is how it pretty much started. I mean, people, once again, they were hopeful. Somebody is doing something. And they got the guts to get together to take to the streets themselves and question their government and fight their governments. So it's really a big thank you. And I just want to meet the people who made this who made this possible, and who made this all, that it happened. So yeah, the major message for me really is a huge thank you.
So if people want more information about the upcoming events, where can they go get tickets and more information?
Yeah, there is a website up. It's www.cadtour.com, and it stands for What Would Christine Anderson Do Tour.
She's a European Member of Parliament, Christine Anderson. Thanks so much for joining us today from Brussels. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to coming to your beautiful country.
Alberta's Deputy Premier and Infrastructure Minister Nathan Neudorf got into a little bit of hot water recently about comments he made about the expansion of the Red Deer Regional Hospital. According to the Red Deer Advocate, Neudorf says there are complexities that most of the general public does not understand, and it's difficult to explain them because it's tedious and very time-consuming. Now, to chat about this in more detail is our Alberta Infrastructure Minister, Nathan Neudorf, who joins us here from Lethbridge. Nathan, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Great to be here, Hal. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Now, Nathan, the NDP called some of your comments arrogant. How do you respond? How do you see it?
Well, of course they do, Hal. This is the political games that go on. But the truth is this, the very reason I went to Red Deer was to spend time with their mayor and council, over 2 hours, and time with their community, where I spent 2.5 hours going through the entire process to pull back the curtain on why does a healthcare project take so long. They have immediate needs in healthcare, and they don't want to wait the better part of 10 years to get the beds and the services that they require. So the number one question is, why does it take so long? Well, it does have to do with the complexities of building a healthcare facility. There's extreme codes, and there's a lot more that goes behind the walls and above the ceilings that people don't see in the finished product, nor should they necessarily care about it when they're going there to get their healthcare need met. But being able to tell the community transparently, with full honesty and integrity, what's going into the process, why it takes so long to be designed, and why it takes a long time to be built, is the honesty and good governance that I tried to do myself in person with them. And the vast majority of those who attended were very pleased that for the first time in years, somebody came to speak with them and tell them the truth. And I'm very pleased that I was able to do that.
Nathan, Premier Daniel Smith has been outspoken about the Trudeau Liberals' Just Transition plan, transitioning hundreds of thousands of Albertans out of the oil and gas sector. How do you plan on fighting back on that? Perhaps maybe bringing forth the Alberta Sovereignty within the United Canada Act?
Well, what we prefer to start with is a collaborative approach. This just transition is completely out of touch with today's current realities. We have hundreds of thousands of employees serving in our oil and gas and our energy sector, and we have huge global demand for these products. we know that we have to transition out, and we in Alberta are working with our stakeholders, our key industry partners, to make that happen in a more and more responsible way. In fact, Alberta leads the world on our ESG, our environmental and social governance policies. We're happy to lead the world in that. We are leading the way in Canada, and we need to make sure that we transition in the appropriate time when there's viable solutions. Many of them are not there. And people that come back and say, well, we have battery operated cars, all I say is, where does the energy come from to power those cars? Right now in Canada, the vast dominant supplier of that energy is oil or natural gas. We do want to make this transition. We do want to do it appropriately. We do want to do it with the environment in mind, but there is a way to do it. And we're asking the federal government to stay in their lane and work with us on the appropriate way to do that without the bullying that we've seen too often from them.
Let me ask you something. Is the province looking into potentially getting more of our oil and gas to Tidewater, perhaps through northern British Columbia? Have there been discussions with BC's new Premier, David Eby, in that regard?
Absolutely. We're looking at every option possible to getting our great energy to market, whether we go through BC in cooperation with the new premier there, or whether we work with Saskatchewan and Manitoba to go to the Port of Churchill or somewhere in Hudson's Bay. We're very happy. We're collaboratively with all the provinces in partnerships. That's why we've talked a lot about economic corridors and pathways. And most importantly, working with our First Nations to make sure that they have a part to play and a role in this economic development that benefits them as well. So yeah, we are looking at every avenue and possible access to market. We just ask the federal government to help with that instead of standing in our way.
Government officials have often talked about red tape reduction and how it saves Alberta taxpayers a lot of money. Nathan, can you discuss how red tape has actually helped many Alberta business owners?
For sure. Red tape, every business owner knows the hoops they have to jump through to try to get their products sold and recover that cost and make a little bit of profit. When we can make that more efficient, we can make it take less time, they make more money, and we as Albertans all benefit. There's a couple of examples. We've changed some things under the Financial Innovation Act, which allows for a regulatory sandbox for some of these innovators to try things without having to answer every question, so we can determine more early what will work and what won't and refine that process. We've streamlined some regulatory requirements so that people can get their businesses operating more efficiently, not waiting for government for answers, but getting it in a more timely fashion. And an example there is we've changed things under the Municipal Government Act, which allows businesses to establish inter-municipal business licenses, people like food trucks, where they don't have to buy multiple licenses for municipalities that are next to each other, saving them time, saving them money. And I think there's some estimates that it saved Albertans over $2.1 billion in the last couple of years. We're very proud of that fact.
Now, Nathan, you and I have chatted in the past about the physician shortage in a number of regions, including right here in Lethbridge. And now the province is investing $1 million to explore ways the post-secondaries, including the University of Lethbridge, can help deliver medical education. Can you explain that collaboration?
Absolutely. I'm very proud of the administration at the University of Lethbridge in their putting this idea forward, that there's lots of studies across Canada that show where people train is most often where they end up working or in a similar kind of setting. Lethbridge is not quite rural, but we are definitely a smaller municipality. Having those doctors, those physicians being able to be trained right here in Lethbridge means that after their 7, 10, 12 years of training, they could be very established in this community and therefore more likely to continue practicing. It helps the students, it helps the university, it helps our region, and it helps our city. I'm very proud of this initiative that we worked at cooperatively with the University of Lethbridge, with the University of Grand Prairie, to make sure that we take the next step to help the future in terms of healthcare provision.
Okay, how about the now? How many doctors can we look forward to seeing, come to Lethbridge in the next few months here?
Well, again, we've 17 hired, and it takes a little bit of time for those people to move and get into Alberta to set up a home and a practice and get practicing. We've seen 4 come online in the last couple of months. We're looking forward to the rest of that 17. And now we're looking forward to the future graduation of at least 10 more as we continue to build that number to serve the needs of Lethbridge and Southern Alberta.
Nathan, when Jason Kenney was Premier, the UCP launched the Alberta is Calling campaign to attract more skilled workers here to our province. How well did that campaign do?
I think that campaign is doing extremely well. We've continued to see record numbers of immigrant population coming to Alberta, not just internationally, but also interprovincially. Now, not every single one of those individuals will find a job in those much needed sectors, but they'll come and work, and many of them will find work in those areas where we really need those skilled workers. We are growing as a province. Our economy is very strong. We are not only leading the nation, we're one of the leading jurisdictions in all of North America. And that's attractive to everyone for opportunities, the opportunity to do well with their family. And I look forward to the continued success of that program and others like it.
Let's talk about the new Agri-Food and Trade Hub Centre, like here in our region in Lethbridge here. We're watching all of the expansion, the construction going on right now. What kind of agribusiness, Nathan, will this really bring to Lethbridge and southwestern Alberta?
Well, it'll bring the ability to showcase all of those different innovative ideas, from tractor and truck dealerships and their equipment to farmers, their seeds, their product, farmers markets, all of that expanding. It'll also prepare through the college and the university the ability to showcase the food products that we can actually produce from what's grown in the region. We're really proud of that. We're excited about the entire new space. And we'll see continued growth of our convention weddings sector with the great new space right off the lake. It's really exciting to see what they can do with that space. It just opens so many opportunities to showcase the strength of our agriculture and our agricultural food production sector here in Southern Alberta. We're very proud of it, and we're getting very close to seeing that new site open to the public.
Nathan, the twinning of Highway 3 is not only a safety concern and long overdue, but you also believe that it can also beef up our GDP here in the province?
For sure. One of the greatest challenges for any industry is getting their product to market. One aspect of that is safety, so the twinning of the highway clearly helps move that in the right direction. The second is capacity, just making sure that our trade arteries are clear and that we can have our big Super B trucks and our big combines and tractors make that access from field to field and have that product get from field to producer or to our train system or a heavy trucking system going north-south, and in some cases even onto airplanes around the world. So this will help that travel. Safety is key, of course, but capacity is the next step that this will help answer.
Now, to address the ongoing opioid crisis here in our city in Lethbridge, there's been a lot of support for another full-time supervised consumption site instead of the mobile truck that moves around. Many feel that harm reduction is vital and would really help save a lot of lives, and it's another good step. What are your thoughts about, and will we see another full-time supervised consumption site, something permanent?
I don't think that's the direction that we want to go. We had one of those, but without the other supports, we also saw the devastation it had on our downtown and the business community. What we really want to do is, yes, we understand that harm reduction is one part and one step in this program, and we have that. But we don't want to leave people there. What we really want to do is have them get into treatment, have them get into longer term programs where they can get their lives back. That's where we've invested. We have the new treatment center just to the east of Lethbridge coming online in the next couple of months. A little bit behind that, we have more on the blood reserve, more beds for treatment and recovery. That's where we want to focus. We don't want to leave people out in the cold, waiting in line just to get their next hit of an addictive drug or something like that. We want to take them the next step, which is into treatment and recovery. That's where our focus is, and that's where we're going to continue to work to get people back to the lives that they truly want.
Speaking of leaving people out in the cold, what about another warming shelter? What's the latest there? Is the province working with the City and Streets Alive to provide a safe and warm place for our city's most vulnerable?
Absolutely. We have provided $1 million of additional winter emergency shelter space funding as part of the action plan on this homelessness. We've seen those spikes in numbers go up and down over the last couple of months. Obviously, when the weather is very cold, it becomes more acute. And we're really proud of our service providers, Streets Alive, amongst others that have really stepped up to help us in this. And we will continue to work on that as the weather is a factor and as those bed shortages may need to be addressed. So we've made the investment. We were able to get through the last cold snap quite well, and we look forward to being able to manage it as we move forward through the winter.
And thank God for our Chinooks here in southwestern Alberta. Nathan, the provincial election is coming up in May. Many feel that it's a pretty tight race right now between the UCP and the NDP. Some political pundits say Edmonton may be won by the NDP. The rural regions will go to the UCP, and that leaves Calgary, my hometown, as the main battleground. How do you see it shaping up?
Well, a lot of that is probably fairly accurate. I think we have a lot of historical data that would show us that those are the trends, but we look forward to running great candidates in every single constituency across Alberta. We think our budget and economic track record is phenomenal, while also meeting the social needs of our cities. We were able to give teachers a raise for the first time in 7 or 8 years. We gave nurses raises. We also gave disability workers raises that they haven't seen in over a decade. We care about our people in Alberta. We care about meeting their needs, and we're doing it in a balanced budget way that secures the future of these programs and not just throwing money to the wind. We're very proud of that. We're proud of paying down debt. We're proud of adding money to our heritage fund and look forward to creating even a stronger future for the next generation.
What is it going to take to win Calgary? Maybe throw some money at to help get a new arena built for the Calgary Flames and Calgary Flames Sports and Entertainment?
No, what we really want to do is provide good governance. We want to show the people of Calgary that we've got compassion and capabilities to balance the budget and meet the needs that they've got. We want to make strategic and smart infrastructure investments, so we're meeting their needs not just today, but also into the future. With that, I think we can show good governance and people understand, hey, you have to balance the budget at home. The province needs to balance the budget as well, because that provides the stability for the future. And I'm proud of that message and proud of that track record.
Nathan, before we let you go, I want to ask, how busy are you right now that you are now Deputy Premier and as well Infrastructure Minister? Do you ever get a chance to see much of your family? Because every time we chat with you, you're either on the road. It's very rare that we actually catch you in Lethbridge.
Well, that's the responsibility and duty of the office, and I'm proud to serve in this capacity. I'm incredibly proud to serve Lethbridge East and Albertans in these roles, to bring my years of experience to infrastructure to help make the best decisions for Alberta that we can. And as Deputy Premier, to help make sure that our government, in a multi-ministry kind of way, are addressing some of the challenges that don't fit into one industry or one ministry in particular. And that's a collaboration and good governance model that, again, our government has brought forward to make sure that we are working in a collaborative way, in an integrated way, not just with ministries one with another, but also with our municipal partners and our federal partners. I think that's what good government looks like, and it does take a little bit of time and effort. Happy to do that on behalf of the people of Lethbridge East and Alberta.
Deputy Premier, Infrastructure Minister, and Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal. Always appreciate it.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.